Good day, a beautiful creation. I'm here with, we're going to do a Kemetic study. Before we do the Kemetic study, we're going to tap into the dream spell matrix, which is inspired by the Galactic Mayans. And then we're going to hit the Kemetic study for the day. So welcome. My name is Coach Veronica Marie, and I'm passionate about helping you live a healthier and a happier life. You can find me on my website at veronicamarie.com. I have a digital library there where you can get books to help you grow forward and become the next iteration of what you're becoming in an informed way with intention. Today is coded by the white self-existing mirror. I define in order to reflect, measuring order. I seal the matrix of endlessness with the self-existing tone of form. I am guided by the power of timelessness. That is the affirmation coming from the Dream Spell Matrix, which is inspired by the Mayan, not the Galactic Mayan, the ancient Mayan sacred timekeeping system. All right. So, as you know, Kemetic study has become part of my passion. And Kemetic spirituality, I found, resonates deeply with me. And usually, if you are watching my lives or if you're on YouTube searching this information, then there's something within you that resonates with it as well. Today, we're talking about knowledge, aka Gnosis. I'm reading from my Egyptian yoga book. It's called The Philosophy of Enlightenment. So you can get that on Amazon. The link is in my profile to my storefront, and I'm pretty sure it's there. If it's not, I'll put it there for you. It's Egyptian yoga. And we know that yoga means union. Yoga is not a religion. There's no worshiping that we're talking about here. What we're talking about is enlightenment, okay? Gnosis means knowing something intuitively without having to think about it. So we're not talking about the mental framework of remembering something or hearing it and being able to repeat it. Gnosis is something different. Having information and having knowledge are not necessarily the same thing. There are two forms of knowledge, direct and indirect. Indirect knowledge is something you learn and are convinced of intellectually. In other words, it makes sense, right? Direct knowledge, on the other hand, indirect knowledge is something you learn and are convinced of intellectually. I think I said that right. Direct knowledge, on the other hand, is something you experience. So take a moment and pause right there. When you read a book or listen to a video, you come into an idea of some new information or a new thought process. It's not accurate to say, I have gnosis now, because gnosis is something that is experienced, okay? But having the knowledge, reading it, taking it in is the first step, usually for most people. But at other times, there's this deep knowing, and you don't even know how you got to know it, okay? Gnosis. It's something that requires no thinking to be understood. Have you ever knew something that you didn't have words for, and it resonated as universal truth? That's more like gnosis. It is being, knowing. It's knowing knowledge as opposed to learning or thinking knowledge. One may learn about a flower by reading, but one does not become the flower. That's a beautiful analogy, right? You can read about something, but that doesn't mean you have become it. To know something it says intuitionally. I would like to say intuitively, is in effect to become it within one's consciousness. In order for gnosis to occur, it is necessary to become identified with the object of study. One may accomplish this through concentrated thought and meditation. However, there are millions of objects in the universe. To become one with each of them would take a very long time. The simpler way is to achieve supreme wisdom, which is Tahuti, by identifying or becoming one with God or nature, who is the source of all objects in existence. Becoming one with or merging with nature is therefore the same as becoming one with all existence, having all knowledge, all power, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. And I'll pause right there. Take a deep breath, inhale and exhale. Therefore, in order to know, that is to have gnosis or experiential knowledge of the transcendent and divine essence of anything, we must be able to connect with its divine essence, to perceive its connection with its creator. I'm going to say that again. And we're talking about people here also. In order to know or have gnosis or experiential knowledge of the transcendent and divine essence of anything or anyone, we must be able to connect with its divine essence, to perceive its connection with its creator. So I am going to pause right there and ask you a question. Is there any person that you're trying to get to know? Do you know how to know them? Do you know how to connect to their divine essence? Do you have an idea at all? That's why I believe that all of the ancient scriptures point to the know thyself first. Do you know your own divine essence in a deep way? Right? Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to see it in other people. Right? So to know or have gnosis or experiential knowledge of the transcendent and divine essence of anything or anyone, you must be able to connect with its divine essence. How do you connect with a divine essence? It's not through commonality. It's not through need. You meet my needs. It's not in perceiving that the person is your other half. That's getting to know how they can meet your need. It's not viewing them in contrast to the people of your past. That's not getting to know their divine essence. And many people don't understand this because they don't know themselves and they don't know their own divine essence. They walk around saying the things that they've heard in the spiritual community, like, I am the divine, I'm sacred, I'm worthy, all of these things. But when you watch the way they move through their mental processes, when you view what they take in, who they interact with, and how, you can tell that they really don't, in a deep way, see themselves as divine. So then you can hear them talking bad about others, talking in a contracted, judgmental energy, fussing and complaining, emotional spewing, villainizing, defending, catastrophizing. All of these things are an indication that a person is not plugged into their divine essence. Because if they were, and I was watching a video this morning, I've shared it in my dating group. If they were, they would understand that when you're experiencing another person, what you think is the other person, you're really experiencing yourself. You're having the experience inside of you. You are not having the experience outside of you. They may have said something, but the way you experience what they said depends on your worldviews. Yeah, D. It depends on how you see the world. It depends on how divine you actually see the orchestrations around you. And if you have a point of view that is less than divine, Grand Rising, y'all, if you have a point of view that is less than divine, then that's when you go into all of, you hear people fussing about others in a way that is villainizing. They did this to me. They made me feel small. They didn't choose me. They did this. They. That is a person who is not plugged into the divine connection of life. Am I saying that we can't recognize when something is being done that we don't like? No, I'm not saying that. But there's a difference in the way a person is expressing when they are disconnected from their divine essence and when they're connected. So I'm talking about Kemetic wisdom. If you just popped in, I'm reading from my Egyptian yoga book, and we're having a discussion. All right. So again, I'm going to read this again because I want you to take it. Therefore, in order to know the capital K-N-O-W, that is to have gnosis. You want to have gnosis about life. Not only something you read in a book. You want to have the experience of the living word in you. And you want to see through the eyes of the living word. And you want to process through the eyes of the living word. And what am I talking about as the living word? The divine essence of life. The divine essence of life. So in order to know, that is, have gnosis or experiential knowledge of the transcendent and divine essence of anyone or anything, even yourself, you must be able to connect with its divine essence. And if you cannot connect with its divine essence because you're connected on a superficial level, on a conditioned level, on a contracted level, then you are actually not knowing anything that seems to be outside of you. You are projecting. And projecting is casting a form or a likeness of something from inside, the concoction of what is gone on in your head. You cast it onto the other thing or the other person as an identity, and then you act based upon that. But knowing its divine essence, to know its divine essence, you must connect to it. And in connecting, you must first be connected to your own divine essence. What does that mean? You need to take that with you throughout the day and chew on it. Because I could give you a lot of knowledge about this, right? But it's really a personal journey. Now, if you want to talk about it personally, you can sign up for a coaching session. Let's go at it. Let's have a conversation concerning it, right? Let me continue to read. If you're not connecting to the divine essence of the thing or the person, any other essence that may be compiled by the use of your senses or other information gathering will only be an illusion. Relationships, yes, will show us where we are. Relationships will show us what we believe. Relationships will show us our patterns, our tendencies. Relationships will show us our power, our expansiveness, our beauty. Relationships will show us our proclivities, what we have a tendency to do. Relationships are portals to ourselves, ways to experience ourselves for greater knowing, for elevation, for enlightenment. That's what relationships are. Absolutely. And if you're not connecting to the divine nature of the person or thing, then any kind of way that you are thinking about the person is an illusion. It's not real. You'll be calling red blue. You'll be calling a square a circle. You'll be calling a confident person a narcissist. You'll be calling trauma bonding love. You'll be calling attachment compassion. You'll be calling projection empathy. I hope this is making sense. In order to perceive absolute and non-changing truth, we must become one with that absolute truth. And this is why I always suggest studying universal truths. I'm coming up with a new ebook with just nothing but universal truths, so you can read them and apply them, right? In order to perceive absolute, non-changing truth, we must become one with that truth. And if you don't know it, you can't become one with it. So then you can't live from it. I always suggest study universal principles, universal truths, universal laws. Why? Because those energies, those frequencies don't change from person to person, region to region. It's true for everybody and everything on this plane. And you need to know that so you can become one with it. Because if you're not becoming one with universal truth, you're becoming one with something, maybe one with your fears, or one with your incomplete experiences, one with your limited knowledge. Again, calling a square a circle, calling red blue and black yellow. Okay? This is the essence of our journey home. The absolute experience of our divine nature will provide us with a state of supreme peace. When you are in alignment with universal truth, that means you need to know it, then when you will live it out. And in living it out, you are becoming it. And in becoming it, you don't have a choice but to see from that stance. That's why we must upgrade our minds day after day, experience after experience. If you are still carrying the same stories about a thing, the same hurtful stories from when you were 6, 12, 15, 19, 30, it's time for you to upgrade that thought process to reflect absolute truth. You see, when you were 3, you didn't know absolute truth. You had the consciousness of a 3-year-old. And the consciousness of a 3-year-old was not vast enough to even process most things. So you need to revisit that and input a universal truth perspective so you can grow that self up, so that self can stop coming up and demanding from people and things and sabotaging. It's time for you to come into different perspectives. And what different perspectives? Learn universal truth and bring that into your daily lived practices, because any other thing that you're doing is an illusion. Any other way you're trying to know yourself, people in the world around you, is from a limited consciousness. In other words, if you can imagine a 3-year-old, right, trying to process something that a 20-year-old can't even process, it's not going to come out sounding like universal truth. It's going to come out sounding like a 3-year-old's logic. I hope that makes sense. And some people, many of us who are on this healing journey, have selves inside with a 5-year-old logic, and you're carrying it out in your relationships. And that logic is causing you pain. And that logic is continuing to bring the same experience, because you can't shift any experience unless you shift your mind. There's a scripture that says, when I was a child, I thought like a child. I spoke like a child. I acted like a child. But when I became an adult, I put away childish things. The lived out version of that is examining your experiences. Understand where you were limited. Learn universal truth. Apply universal truth and start practicing telling that story from a universal truth lens. It's going to sound much different than resentment. It's going to sound much different than bitterness. It's going to sound much different and feel much different. It's going to feel more expanded, more elevated, it's going to feel lighter. It's going to help you understand the purpose in the undercurrent of life. And when you do that, then you become one with that truth, and then you bring another truth and another truth. Instead of becoming one with the 5-year-old you become one with universal truth, the absolute, the divine. Instead of becoming one with your 14-year-old limited person, with universal truth. And in doing so, you become more and more of a reflection of the divine. Hey, Golden Hyena, good. I'm glad you're here. And this is how you're going to be able to form and resonate with other beings of these frequencies, and you're going to have a better time in connections. That's not a guarantee that every connection is going to last, because every connection didn't come here to last. We live in a world of transience, meaning things come and go. They flow in and they flow out. You flow in, you flow out. And this idea of clinging and blaming and limitedness and holding suspicion, fear, it cannot bring you the peace that you desire in yourself or with others. So let me read this one more time. The absolute experience of our divine nature will provide us with a state of supreme peace. The true way to know God is by looking within and not out, because our deepest self, we're talking about pretty deep, not your brain, not this brain, but the consciousness that is streaming through, right? Our deepest self is God, regardless of gender, race, creed, or religion. Therefore, in order to know God, it's necessary to be God. You can't see the God in nobody else when you don't know God in you. And there's the intellectual practice of saying, oh, I know I'm God. I know I'm worthy. I know I'm this. And then there's the gnosis of being it. People who are being it are making decisions as God, because they are. People who are being it are showing up, Rich Rising, as God, because they are being God. They're not taking on a God-like perspective. Okay? It's necessary to be God. And how do you become God? From a human conditioned mind. How do you do that? Through applying absolute truth, universal truth, universal laws and principles. And then you begin to interpret the world from the mind of universal truth, which is the divine. So then you don't start blaming other people. Oh, they did this, they took that, they whatever. You see it from a different lens, because now you are living as God, not as the hurt human you. The hurt human you deserves compassion, deserves attention, deserves acknowledgement. But I'm talking about the next step. The next step is not, they did this to me and now because of it. That's not the next step. The next step is, this is what happened. Greetings, Day. How you doing? This is what happened. I'm applying universal truth to it. I'm discovering what action can come from universal truth, and I'm living like it. And I'm going to keep putting that into practice until it's natural. I'm not going into the old mindset of fear and resentment and bitterness, and they did this. Or beating up on yourself. Oh, I made the wrong decision. I failed. No, you have never failed. There's no such thing as failure. When you're being God, you know that. If you think that God failed when God created humanity because some religious constructs say that, then you think God can fail. And then God got to come up with a plan B because God created something imperfect. That's some religious paradigms say that. And if you believe that, then you will think you also can fail. But when you're being the absolute truth, becoming one with it and the divine, you understand that you create your world, you create your experiences by the perspective that you take. It's all mental. And I'm not preaching here as someone who just read it and decided it was fun. It's an everyday walk of godness, of seeing how I can become this next iteration of myself from this. Not how I stay stuck, not how I regress, not how I blame others, not how I sit in contraction. When I feel contracted, because I'm human, I do feel contracted. When I say contracted, I feel some emotional pain somewhere. I'm going to sit there and go, what universal truth applies here before I react and respond? It's a practice, and some situations are easier than others, especially when it's emotionally intense. Sometimes you go into the conversation and you have to stop and go, you know what? I need to reassess. I need to step back. I need to come out of this text. I need to get off the phone. I need to go outside because this right here is going in a way that I don't want to create. And when you find yourself creating something that you don't want to create, when you know your Godness, maybe you temporarily came out of your God perspective and you started moving in defense, offense, shame, fear, guilt, then you remember, wait a minute, I'm practicing universal truth. I'm becoming one with universal truth. I went a little far out here, but let me reel myself back in. And what truth applies here? A lot of times you are offended by other people because you have a controlling tendency. And I'm not saying you are controlling, you have a controlling tendency. What does that look like? That looks like wanting people to think what you want them to think. So you mask. You don't think that's controlling, but it is. Putting on a mask because you want to be seen a certain way is trying to control how people see you. Now, if you're doing it because you have a business and you don't want to show up on your job as a wild person, that makes sense. That's not a mask. That's choosing wisely. But I'm talking about in everyday life. You don't want to seem like the bad guy, so you don't say no. You don't want someone to see you as not caring, so you go against your own yes or no to control how they think. You don't want them to see you as less than spiritual or weak. So instead of saying what you really feel, you say the thing you think is right. It is necessary, right, to become one with universal truth and be the truth. And the only way you're going to be it is to do what I'm saying. Take it in and practice. So here's your, let's say, self-reflective activity. Think about something that has happened to you that was painful. And don't go too far into deep, intense pain. Choose something that's right on the top of your memory. Something that felt painful, that you've been saying something like this on. They did this to me, and because of them, think about it. Because they said that to me, I started, think, peace, Ayan. Because they didn't do X, Y, and Z, I think about stories like that. And I want you to rework that. All right. I'm not going to tell you how to rework it. I want you to rework it by researching universal truths, universal principles. Do a Google search and start doing your research. And I want you to find a universal truth that applies there that feels expanded. That feels expanded. Because some people are going to go find a universal truth that causes more contraction. See, I knew it. And they're going to do all that. That's not what I'm talking about. Because I'm talking about stepping into your next level. I need you to find a universal truth that hits somewhere inside as gnosis. You feel it viscerally. What do I mean by that? Your body responds. You go, ooh. Yeah. Oh. You feel expanded. You feel more in understanding. You feel lighter within yourself. You feel like a load has been lifted. You're going to find a universal truth that has that effect. And you're going to rework that story, applying universal truth to it. If you need some help with that, sign up for a session. Okay, you can find me on my website at veronicamarie.com. If you seriously want a session and you don't see a time available on my website, send me a message. I'm not playing, so don't send me a message because you just want a conversation or you just want to be close and get to know me. Send the message if you really want some assistance with this narrative that you have. You really want to rework it and upgrade it so that you can become one with absolute truth. All right, so let me end right here. Thank you. So for the people who just popped on, this is a Kemetic study. In order to know, that means have gnosis or experiential knowledge of the transcendent and divine essence of anything and anyone, we must be able to connect with its divine essence. That means you got to be connected to your own divine essence. And let me give you some insight. This is not judgment. I'm not saying right, wrong, good, or bad. I'm describing. If you travel throughout your days in disempowerment, stuckness, stagnant feeling energy, bitterness, resentment, blame, then you are not in those spaces connected to your divine essence. The true way to know God is by looking within and not out, because our deepest self is God. So if you're trying to see the divine in someone else, you must first know thyself as the thing that you're trying to see. Therefore, in order to know God, it is necessary to be God. Ashe. If you're not connected to your own divine essence, and you can tell when people are not connected, because it's in the way they tell about the world. It's the way they see the world. And again, this is not condemnation nor judgment. This is giving you insight, number one, on what is going on when you hear things from people and what is going within you when you say things. Am I connected to my divine essence? Now, this is not about masking. Let me tell you what masking is. I feel betrayed, but you don't say, I feel betrayed, and rework that story. You say, but you know what? I'm not worried about it. God got me. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. But you still carry the resentment inside. That just changed your trajectory. Ashe. I love that. You feel used. So, but instead of reworking that, according to your godness, you say, that's all right. They couldn't do nothing unless I allowed it. I take note. I'm not doing that again. But you still feel used. I'm talking about effective resolution of the things that hold you hostage or seem to hold you hostage, that prevent you from being in your godness, that prevent you from creating from your godness. That's what I'm talking about. So I got a client at 9:15, so I got to go. It's 9:15. I thoroughly enjoy this. And I'm going to put this video on YouTube. I just uploaded my one from yesterday on there. My YouTube link is in my profile, Coach Veronica Marie. I got to go, y'all, because my client going to be like, where am I? Peace. And look for this on YouTube. Join my bulletin board and sign up for coaching if you need it. All right, you got what you needed. Ashe. Bye, y'all.